So here we are, 10th day of the government shutdown, no end in sight. Yesterday, Senate got together, had another vote, the 7th vote, and it failed, unsurprisingly. So what happens from here? Does the government shutdown continue throughout the rest of the month? Will it go into November? Maybe it'll beat the last government shutdown, which was 35 days. Are we trying to set a record here? Nobody knows. It's anybody's guess. But what we do know is this weekend, the paychecks that federal workers are going to be receiving, it's going to be a little bit light. It's going to be a partial payment. It's not going to be a full paycheck. And the lawmakers, they understand this. They realize this. It's not a big surprise. It's not a mystery. Now, there's a little bit of a disconnect because we have people in the private sector that get furloughed too. And they're like, hey, why does a federal worker get paid when they're furloughed? Nobody in the private sector gets paid while they're furloughed. Doesn't seem fair. And I wish that people in the private sector who were furloughed, I wish they could get money. I wish they could get their back pay. But there's a big difference between the public sector and the private sector. So in the private sector, everything is based on profit. It's based on market considerations. Are they price cutting? Is there low demand? They're not paid by the taxpayers. So when someone in the public sector, when a federal employee is furloughed, it's for one reason. It's because of political failure. It's not because it had anything to do with their performance. It's not because it has anything to do with that specific federal agency. It's because there has been a failure at the political level. Congress controls the money. Congress largely views this as an injustice to the federal worker. And that's why there's back pay to furloughed federal workers. It is the law. President Trump signed that law in 2019. Now, what we are seeing, because we have troops that are not going to get paid as well, I believe the first pay period, they will not receive a check, is on the 15th. I think that's next Wednesday. So there was this act that was proposed, Pay Our Troops Act. This was introduced by a Republican, but we have 80 Democrats in the House that want to push it, that signed a letter to the Speaker of the House, put this bill up for vote. We will vote on it. But the Speaker of the House doesn't want to do that. The Speaker of the House is not calling the House back into session until the 14th, until next Tuesday. And even still, they're probably not going to vote on it because that's the whole point. The whole point is not to pay people, to create the pain. Without the pain, there is no leverage. That is being used as leverage right now to get lawmakers to vote a specific way. So why would they do that? And I also want you to keep in mind, troops don't get paid that much. Whatever you're paid right now, troops probably get a lot less than you. Because if you take the average fresh recruit that joins the military, the average service member, when they get into the military, regardless of branch, they're probably making about $2,000 a month. So you're looking at $1,000 every 2 weeks. If you take away taxes and all the rest of it from it, you're looking at $700 every 2 weeks. Let me ask you right now, could you survive if I paid you $700 every 2 weeks? Could you make it? You probably couldn't make it. They're going to be having a hard time trying to make it as well. And they're essentially on call 24/7. So no matter what time it is throughout the day and night, they could be called up and they have to work, they have to perform. It happens when they're going on their training rotations. They have nighttime missions. Now, I was there pounding a picket into the earth at about 1 a.m. So you're working. And if you do the calculation, really, it's less than minimum wage. The troops, a lot of them are getting paid less than minimum wage. So it would be nice to actually pay them. If this act were to pass, probably won't, but if it does get passed, 4 categories of individuals would get paid. First, you have the active duty service member. They would receive their paycheck. Then you have National Guard, who has been federalized. As you know, we have National Guard storming into multiple cities, about 4 cities that hit the news recently. Chicago, they're going in there. Portland. So the National Guard that have been federalized, they would get paid. Then you have civilians in the Department of War. So the people that make up the Department of War, it's like a third of the federal workforce. 1 out of every 3 people work for the Department of War. And then also the defense contractors, which is kind of surprising. And here's a question I have for you. Are we still going to call them defense contractors, or are we going to call them war contractors because of the name change to the Department of Defense? Another thing is, really, it still is the Department of Defense. It's not really the Department of War, because the executive order, it specifies that the name Department of War will be used when it is not a legal requirement, when it's not a statutory requirement. So it's more of a ceremony type use of the Department of War. To do a true federal agency name change, you would need congressional approval. So I think from now on out, I'm just going to call it DOD, Department of Defense. And then we have some Senate Democrats that are like, yeah, let's take care of the troops, but go ahead and add some other jobs, other roles right now. What about air traffic controllers? Let's get them paid. You know, that's causing delays in airports across the country right now. What about TSA? Same thing. There's a lot of federal workers right now that are working, accepted federal workers that are working, but they're not getting paid. What about paying them? And maybe furloughed is a little bit lower on the priority list, but let's pay some of these folks. That's not going to happen though. So anyway, while all of this is happening, we have the president that's saying he is going to start making cuts, and they're going to be permanent cuts to Democrat programs. What does that even mean? There's no such thing as permanent when you're talking about the president doing something. Any executive order that comes out from a president, no matter who it is, it can be undone by another executive order, by another president. Any law that Congress passes can be undone by Congress passing another law, or by getting challenged in the Supreme Court, or a lot of different ways. But the thing is, there is no such thing as permanent. I think the word permanent is being used to invoke fear. A federal agency can grow, shrink, and then grow again. All these changes are reversible. But the programs I believe the president is speaking about include the infrastructure projects that were happening in left-leaning cities, big cities like New York City, Chicago. Any type of environmental program that's receiving federal dollars, I believe he'll probably cut that. And then, of course, as always, healthcare. Healthcare will be on the chopping block. So that's probably what he's talking about. The specifics really haven't come out. So all we can do is just assume what he's talking about when it comes to Democrat programs. There could be another vote this afternoon in the Senate. Probably not. Most indications are showing that the next vote will happen on the 14th, which will be this coming Tuesday. Now, will that actually lead to anything meaningful, or will it be performative? Will it be like a performance, like, hey, we're doing our job, but you're really not, because you're not compromising. You're not doing anything to try to get the government open. And meanwhile, the shutdown will continue to impact not just federal workers, military service members, airports across the country, and a lot of important programs that millions of Americans count on each and every day. That'll still happen. Now, have we seen anything when it comes to the mass layoffs that OMB was talking about? OMB had that memo threatening these enormous layoffs that were going to come if the Democratic senators did not vote with the Republicans on the clean CR. No, that hasn't happened. A lot of people are starting to think that was largely a threat. That was an intimidation technique that just did not work. So it gets escalated. The threats get escalated. We'll hear more and more as we move into next week. But we have seen the number of furloughed federal workers grow and grow. The IRS, they furloughed like half of the agency over there. They're essentially closed for business. And then you had EPA. They kept their workers in the dark for a long period of time. 9 days they were kept in the dark. They furloughed the majority of that agency as well. As the furloughs increase, it's over 600,000 people right now. That's how many people have been impacted. They're at the House. And if you want to know a little bit more about the furloughs and how that's impacting everything, if you're interested in that, check this video out next. Stay updated by signing up to the free newsletter down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.